Welcome everybody to the Brian Picrosi podcast. That's me. We have Annie Marie joining us for the first time ever, who will be my co-interviewer. And John is, I think you're my most visited guest on this podcast. Cool, you're probably number fourth time, fifth time.
That's pretty awesome.
You don't even need to say his last name.
John Stringer. John Stringer, world famous musician.
Good to be back.
Teacher, author. And Kathy Stringer, first time.
Woo-hoo, first timer right here.
Chandler,
so
mother,
we got John and Kathy.
Of Flow.
That's right.
John and Kathy together, and we're going to talk about relationships.
Yes.
And this is going to be, I think, a pretty epic podcast. So I've been doing most of them live on Facebook, so this is going to be on audio version, which is a nice new format to delve into. So
Love it.
It's fun, but we're going to keep it the same style, just kind of authentic, spontaneous conversation, and see what arises.
That's perfect.
So yeah, the topic of relationships is obviously a really important topic for people. I think it's where we're challenged the most, and where we struggle the most, but also where we can grow the most and expand and awaken the most through relationship. So this is just a chance to share wisdom that you both have ascertained, and secrets to surviving and thriving.
Yes, thriving.
That's us.
Going from surviving to thriving.
That's right. We like that.
And back again.
Uh-huh.
It's constant motion.
Yeah.
So I've heard your story many times of how you've come together. Mm-hmm. But maybe we start there. Like, how did you come together?
I'll give the short bullet point, and then you fill in the rest.
Okay. Yes. Go ahead.
So we actually met in the music industry way back. Don't even remember what year it was, and met at a music venue where Kathy was actually managing her then boyfriend, among others. And after that competition,
John was in a competition,
right? Which her then boyfriend won, and my band was like third place or something. We actually went our separate ways and reconnected in the music industry often. I went and checked out her soon-to-be husband, who was the boyfriend at that time. Checked out his band a couple of times, admired him, just a great musician, and admired their relationship. Later, we connected through her music conference. We would see each other every now and then, but there was nothing going on, obviously.
I always thought John was a really good guy. That's what would come to me.
Yeah.
Such a good guy.
And she got married. They had their daughter. I actually got to see her present the picture to him. Jeffrey is his name. And then
Father's Day, I gave him a beautiful
picture of the baby. It was really sweet ceremony and everything. And I was dating somebody at the time. That was that. Later, we ended up reconnecting after I went through all kinds of relationships, and I knew she was going through her divorce because my then girlfriend told me about it. Did you hear blah blah blah? Because Kathy had become big music conference manager. Yeah, was running this huge music conference in Atlanta. It was the conference to go to and play at. My band wanted to play. And so it was big news. My girlfriend comes and tells me, did you find out they're splitting up? I was like, oh, wow, I didn't know that. That's, okay. And we ended up reconnecting after, I think one of your meetings. I was coming from a job I had at the time. We met up on the street right out front of the Hard Rock Cafe Atlanta.
Right.
And just reconnected as friends. You didn't know I knew what was going on, and you told me.
So there was the synchronicities of the event. Was first when we met at this venue, he was talking to my then boyfriend Jeffrey and I, and having the thought, right? What were you thinking as you were talking to us?
So that I admired the relationship. I want a relationship like that.
Yeah, like that's the kind of relationship that I want.
Yeah.
So he started reaching out to Jeff, but I was Jeff's manager, so I took
not because of the relationship. Though.
Yeah, just reaching out about
music
songs,
stuff,
how they were written, what was in inspiration, and I'm responding to all of these emails as Jeff. Mm-hmm. So John and I are talking, And, he just kind of became like a person we would talk about. Oh, I'm like, you're getting an email from John Stringer again. He'd be like, just answer it, So I kind of got to know him through that, which was just kind of funny. So I just had this admiration for him as being a good guy. And many years, 7 years went by from that. And then when I was going through my divorce, it was the biggest challenge of my life. And John just kept showing up and popping up. And I was at an event for my music conference, and we talked forever. We just saw each other, and at that time he already knew, but I didn't know he knew because I hadn't told anybody. He heard it in a kind of interesting way. Anyway, just was, when I would see him, it was just like everything seemed to be okay. We would just talk and connect, but nothing beyond just a good guy. You want me to keep going?
No, so I feel that. So 3 days prior to us connecting romantically, spiritually, like whatever you want to call it, I'd done a clarity exercise that I learned in the Army. Had nothing to do with spiritual practices, I didn't think. But lo and behold, once I got clear, I realized what I wanted to feel like. 3 days later, it happened. We end up dancing at a club.
Club 1150.
Club 1150.
On 7-Eleven.
And it was magic in the sense of it was everything I had described, vibrationally felt, but it was so confusing to me because it was unexpected. And neither of us expected it. We both walked out like, what just happened here? And so long story short, that was kind of brought us together. Kind of how it happened in the music industry. And my band was like, dude, you better not screw this up. I didn't exactly have a great track record,
Yes.
in relationships.
He had a little bit of a reputation.
Yeah.
My friends were like,
it wasn't a negative reputation. It was just
playa.
I wasn't even a player. I was open relationships.
That's a player.
Very honest.
Open relationships.
No. I mean open relationships in the sense of, hey, I do not do blah blah blah. That kind of open relationship. Like I'm in an open relationship.
No commitment.
Yeah.
Yes.
It was very transparent, and it would always crash and burn. And luckily, when we started seeing each other, went to our first date, we had that talk. It's like, so I think I put it like this. So I'm sure you probably want to play the field and all this since you're going through getting out of a divorce. You're probably not ready to settle down or nothing like that.
This was about 2 weeks in when we were really getting deep. Yes.
And so, I felt like I needed to bring it up. I'm like, I'm seeing other people and da-da-da-da. You probably, I'd imagine you don't really want to like make this monogamous or anything, right?
And my heart just fell. I was like, what? Because I've always been in monogamous relationships. I was like, nope, that's not what I was thinking.
Well,
at first I said that.
Okay.
I said it wasn't what I was thinking.
Gotcha.
So he explained to me how it'd be so beautiful to go in that direction. We would continue to see other people and continue to see each other. And I was like really hurting, but I found this guy when I thought after my divorce I was done with men. I was like, no, especially musicians. And
surprise.
And so I agreed. And I went home that night.
For 16 hours.
Could not sleep. I really, through the journey of after my divorce, I'd really found myself and connected to who, kind of had lost myself in the marriage and found myself again and just felt so good about who I was. And I was just like, that's just not me. It's just not working for me. And so, I talked to my sister, who was a huge sounding board for me, and it broke my heart, but I called the next day and I was just like, I know you're not going to want to hear this, but I just can't do it. We can be friends. I really like you and I want to spend time with you, but I can't be with you.
So I was like, okay, let's be friends.
So we decided to be friends.
For about a week. Right?
2 weeks.
2 weeks. 2 weeks. And it was like friends with no benefits.
Friends with no benefits. But we had a
great time. After that 2 weeks, I realized I wasn't seeing anybody else. Everything else had faded.
Right.
And so I was just like, you know what, screw it. Let's just be monogamous. That was 16 years ago.
16 years ago. But that was a big turning point because I think for me, standing up for what really I just knew was who I was, ended up shifting because all of these other girls had said they probably thought they would change him and said, yes, I could be wrong, but it seemed like they all crashed and burned because they probably said, yes, I will do that. And then they were miserable. Then they expected John to change. And I just was like, you know what? I can't do it. And I know that. So if you can't come this way, let's just, hug and hang out.
Hug and hang out. For about 2 weeks, we were miserable.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, it was great, but we were
hanging out
God,
every day of every moment.
Yeah.
Really. And
it's pretty funny.
So I do remember the night we were just looking at each other longingly, and he was like, man, I don't even have any interest in seeing anybody else. I haven't been seeing anybody else. You're the only person I want to see. Let's do this thing.
Yep.
I said, okay.
16 years.
Yeah.
Nice.
Going strong. So that's
the abbreviated version.
Yeah. It's in a book.
Yes, it is in a
rest
book.
of it,
We wrote, we had our 11:11 chapter in Love and Oneness.
11:11 love story. Adventures in Manifesting
Love
Love
and
and
Oneness.
Oneness. Yeah. It's on Amazon.
Okay. So, there you have it.
Beautiful story.
Yeah. So
Thank you.
That's
you.
the fun bullet
Start
points.
of our great journey.
I was going to inquire into, just for John, going from open relating then into monogamous and how that transition was for you, and was there a process? But it seems like it was just choiceless, and it was just
It was. I did some consideration, but it felt natural because of where we were after that 2 weeks of, not seeing anybody else, and I kept considering, and I'm like, this is how I feel. Plus, there were some other things, I dropped a lot of the relationships. There was only one relationship I was even considering at that time, and trying to weigh, and was like, well, this relationship is way better than that one. I don't, even though it took 2 years to finally make that concrete decision in my head. But we dated monogamously for 2 years, and then for 3 days we had a time where we parted ways, where I was going through uncertainty, just feeling like, man, it's been 2 years. I don't know if I'm ready to commit and marry and all this other stuff. It's like, I just need this time to figure it out, get clear. And there was really that one relationship I was concerned about. I called that same girl and was like, look, here's the deal. Remember you from 2 years ago, blah, blah, blah. Want to chat, blah, blah, blah. What I realized was it was the same as it was back then. There was no chemistry, no connection, no nothing. And it reinforced why Kathy was really what I had manifested, let's just say. It was very clear. So that 3-day break, then we got back together, and for 2 years after that, it was it was easy. It was, in one sense choiceless, and in another sense there would come times where I would have that come back up, my consciousness, and be like, what's up with this? And as I began to get into the ability to channel and access higher things, that's what I recognized was my desire was really that connection, that oneness, that I could find that internally.
Right.
Although that didn't mean how I would express eventually, that didn't define how I'd express eventually. That was just the foundation of where I needed to come from. That was the most important thing I was seeking. So once I found that, I was like, okay,
right.
Now I don't have to have this battle, of monogamy versus open relationships, or, commitment versus, whatever. So that helped a lot.
That break for me was very eye-opening as well, because, it shocked me. I was about to get on a plane and go to Toronto for 3
That's
days,
right.
running my music conference, and I'm about to leave, and we get in the kitchen, and he's like, you know what? I mean, as far as I knew, everything was great. And he's just like, I don't know if this is, if I'm ready to take this to the next level. Right before I'm about to go get on a plane. Anyway, I was like, okay.
You about to be gone. Let me go ahead and let you know.
So we decided, let's take
funny.
these 3 days and see how we feel at the end of the 3 days. So, but for me, it brought me back obviously to my divorce and how things split. And it really reminded me of my power. When I was on that plane, when I got to that amazing hotel, and I'm living my life, and trust me, I was concerned and scared, but I went to this place it was just a great reminder that I have the power. I had given my power away, and I had to really look at it. Okay, we might come back and decide this is best, let's keep going, or not. I had to I remember, writing about it and journaling about it, and really, as much as I was hoping we would continue on the road together, trying to make peace with whatever happened. And that was a powerful moment for me too.
It's like a
And
spiritual,
it was spiritual.
deep journey.
Yes. And he shared that whole story with me when I got back, that he called the girl and all of that. The one thing that I do have to say is I was very intending on manifesting an honest man. And I said this earlier today, I've never met anybody as honest as John.
It's beautiful.
It was exactly what I needed. And sometimes it would be like, you don't have to be that honest.
Blind honesty. I didn't know what I was doing. I was just trying to be honest,
But what it's created between us is this true sense of knowing that I can always count on his honesty. I can't say that I can always know what he's going to do and be like, I'm sure he will never do this. But I know, at least I feel like I know, he will be honest about it. Yeah. And when we were sitting there and he was telling me he called this girl and whatever, I was just like mad at first. I'm like, you did what? In my mind, I'm like, who do you think? Just all this ego came up.
I need the break.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
But then afterwards, I looked at it and said, you know what? He didn't even have to tell me any of that. But he tells me, and that gives me an honest way to make a decision.
Right.
So I have the facts.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate that about you.
What was great at that time, what I remember was, like, we had that communication, honest communication. It wasn't what she wanted to hear, of course. But what was beautiful, I'll never forget how she was just like, I think it's crazy. And I think, she was real honest with me. Like, I just think this is insane. And I think you need to fight or something. I can't remember.
It was before I left. I said, you need to fight for us.
Yeah, you need to fight
we really
something
have
like
something
that.
here. You just can't walk away because it's been 2 years. I'm like, take the weekend.
It was awesome, actually. It was really cool what she said.
Yeah.
I'll never forget that. But I still felt like I needed that time, right?
And
she was cool with that.
That time was meant to be.
But it was one of my good buddies, actually. Speaking of accountability, one of my groomsmen, good buddy of mine, was the one who we chatted, and he was just telling me, man, look, it seems like you're holding on to something that ain't even real, and trying to grasp at something that's not real when you have something real already. That clicked for me too, and I later realized he was correct. It's after that phone call. But what's amazing, at this time we weren't both on the same spiritual path.
Yeah.
And I wasn't on the path I'm on now either.
And
this
I was
like
going to Catholic church every Sunday.
Yeah, this was like designed crisis to get us to a point where we're really looking at clearly what direction we're going to go.
Seeking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so through that, I think it brought us to a point where we really took another 2 years, for me anyway, to assess and be aware of what was going on now that I'd closed that back door and realized, wow, this really is. By the time I got back 2 years later, coming back from overseas, from touring, I was so clear. It's like, let's
marry this girl.
Let's get married. I don't want to travel anymore without you. I felt like all of that, right? Yeah. It was pretty cool.
It's beautiful.
So we did that. And of course we've gone through all kinds of wonderful revelations, realizations, and things since then. Like we've had discussions about redefining our relationship since then too, and gotten guidance, and so that's an ongoing appreciation,
conversation,
yes. But it's been, I think it's part of the spiritual journey. For me, it has been, obviously. What is relationship? We're going to do a podcast on it too.
What is relationship?
Yeah, what is relationship?
Pillow talk.
Awaken
pillow talk.
So that's been...
What is relationship is the question?
Part of it, when it comes to our type of relationship, but also when it comes to relationship period. I think we'll be hitting some of that with experts. And then I think our role is going to be bringing consciousness to it. And not fear, but love. I think that's important.
So to you both, what is relationship?
To me, relationship is honesty and communication, respect, really being conscious of the person you love and always attempting to come from a place of love and to hear the other person, which we certainly have our moments where we forget those things. But, with anyone, you want to be able to be present, hear them, and discuss from a place of love. Yeah. One person may feel like we need to go one direction, one person may feel like we need to go to another direction. So can we come together and find a path that will work for the two of us?
Yeah.
That's a relationship for me.
Yeah, I agree. I think the foundation, as we've seen, is relationship with self, figuring that out, finding ways that work, relationship with, quote, other, which is really extension of self, finding what practices work that way. That's how we've explored it. And then co-creating something with this extension of self, right? I guess that for our journey, that's how it's felt. Like I felt the most important thing for me is to relate to who am I, what am I, let go of the stuff I'm not, and keep exploring there first, and then bring that to relating with, quote, the other. And we've had a blast at it, man. We traveled the world together and
we're just starting traveling.
Well,
you've traveled the world.
By the way, we should share that.
Yeah.
We're in Italy right now, in an attic.
That's right. In a hot attic in Italy.
We're at a really beautiful home where we're leading a retreat here.
Amazing.
This week-long retreat, facilitated. We get a full house of people, full community of people coming, and we found a spot in the attic to do this podcast that's quiet and away and has no air conditioning. And there's a storm. Big storm outside.
Brewing.
But yeah, you guys are really, it feels like you're on a shared mission. Does that feel like true? Like there's a purpose of your relationship has a mission to it?
Yeah.
Yes. It's obviously no mistake that I've been in the music business for 20 years. He's a musician and we came together and it just became a very co-supportive. But what's interesting is, though I've always been a manager and he's always been an artist, as of late he's really been supporting me to step out and not just always be behind the scenes, which is one of the reasons we're going to step out together and do our podcast. And I've been leading retreats on my own, so really it's interesting that now it's kind of shifting where I felt like I was always supporting him to go out and step out, and now he's really supporting me to step out. So that's been very beautiful. That's transpired. But to really take the message that first started coming through him and now it also comes through me. We both channel. Limitless love and light is really what I like to see it as, and really taking that all over the world. Wherever we find demand for limitless love and light, that's where we want to be. Yes?
Yeah. I feel like, too, we've become sort of those, since she was a catalyst in my journey to be more self-aware and to see the things I didn't like, but let me rephrase that, to let go of certain things that weren't working. But she was also the mirror to help me see and reframe the way I thought about myself. Which is great, because she would always say, "You're a good man." I'm like, "No, I'm not. You don't know what you're talking about." We'd have debates that I'm not a good person. It was the craziest thing. It's just hilarious. But she would always have that faith, like, "You are a good man." I'm like, I'd quote my religious upbringing and all the things why I'm not a good man. It's just hilarious. And luckily, and then she had a strong commitment and a daily practice of journaling, which when I didn't have any real practice at the time, for about a good 10-year stretch. I was wilding out, having a good time, and she'd be journaling and have her little, and at the end sign off, "I hope God leads us to something," to whatever it was. And I remember we were at a business meeting together, after promoting a successful series in Atlanta, and I brought on this other team to help co-promote it. Went great. And then this is the first event they did out of this series, and they said, we want 50%. And I my hands started shaking. I was so mad. I was like, 50%? What the? I created this series, and you just did one of it. What the? You know, I was so just all up in the ego. I had to put my hands down under the table. I was shaking so bad. She became a peacemaker. Why don't we? I don't know what you said.
I don't know, but I remember being a peacemaker.
Yeah. Why
many
don't
years
we resume this at another time?
It was going down.
It was going in
road.
flames.
Yeah.
I was hot. And so she escorted me out the building. And on the drive, I was just like, oh my God, I can't control my emotions. You know, I was shaking so bad I had to hide my hands. I'm like, what is going on? And I remember praying, I got to find something that works. I don't like where I'm at emotionally. I don't like what I've become. Don't like being out of control like this. It's like something's got to give. And that was, you know, so through our relationship, really, she was this force that helped along the way and encouraged me and all kinds of stuff. So we had a good 10-year run. I made a lot of mistakes too at the beginning.
Yes, but you were always honest about them.
Yeah, I was always honest, and she was always forgiving and set some boundaries. But it was just one of those stories, like, you know, you create. And I feel like she was such a great example of love, of seeing the good, of forgiving, of encouraging, of trusting, of hoping, all kinds of stuff. It paid off, in my opinion. Paid off, so yeah.
Well, once again, it's so beautiful that on the journey, in the beginning, I really felt like I was the steady, you know. But now, you know, once we started on this new journey, you know, together, we went from what I thought was going to be, he was going to become a Catholic, we were going to be, you know, Catholicism all the way, nothing against it. But when we kind of got on the journey together, we found that, okay, that's not really a fit for us. And we started exploring and seeking, and our spiritual journey changed so much. One thing I want to share.
Strangely, I don't know if this is kind of the communication we have too. She'll say something and I'll redefine it my way.
Or the other way around. Go ahead.
She said we tried it, got on the path together.
Oh, we never got on Catholicism
That's
together.
what I was gonna
I didn't
redefine.
mean that. I'm
Okay.
sorry. No, he was never with
Never got on
Catholicism.
Catholicism. Not that I
Now
have
he's more
against it.
accepting of it now. I mean, you know, you don't.
Yeah.
You've left the judgment.
Yeah.
But so about after 2 years, he asked me, and I share this with people because rarely does a man ask you this question. Brian might ask this question. What are 5 things, write down 5 things you would like to see of me in our relationship? You know, we hadn't even read any spiritual books yet, okay? So I was like, okay. And then I said, what 5 things do you want me to, you know, I'll write 5 things down. And he said, no, you're perfect. I don't really want you to change. I swear, baby, that's what he said. I was like, okay.
Did I say that?
Yes, you didn't let me write down any.
I'm just kidding.
You missed your chance. So the reason I bring that up is I wrote down things about him and my daughter having a great relationship, him getting to know my family, but ultimately that he and I would get on a path to God together. I wrote it down, and in my mind that meant he would become a Catholic. That's what I meant. But later I looked back and said, I mean, I can't imagine us being more on a path to God together than we are right now. You know, now we look at God in a different way, but it is, our whole lives are about, you know, connecting with the inner knowing, the God within us, the, you know, letting that lead us. I couldn't even imagine living like this, but putting that down in a general term is exactly where I feel like we are. We're on a path to God.
Okay, so how did this happen? How did you go from you're a Catholic, you seem like you're kind of lost.
Yeah.
I
was a lost son.
How do you go from that to on the spiritual path together? What was the opening there?
Well, for me, it was at that turning point where I just realized I needed to change, and I prayed, show me something. One of my buddies came along at some NASCAR, or I don't remember what it was, some sort of car racing event. My band was playing that, and he tells me, you got to check this out. And he was a guy that was in a college ministry before that 10-year hiatus. And so anyway, he introduced me to Secret, checked that out, things started clicking, went on this whole, started reading, you know, Science of Getting Rich, all these different things, and then realized, okay, if it's about my mind, I got to find something to shift how I'm thinking. Started looking in that direction of gratitude and just started finding practices. Then I started meditating. Meditation, I think, was the biggest. Journaling and meditation, gratitude and meditation at the same time. Those practices. Then I started streaming consciousness writing, started studying genius, all this stuff. All really came down to finding practices. I didn't know that's what I was doing, but I was finding practices that worked and helped me shift. Next thing you know, I'm opening up, I'm accessing this information, etc. So that was my part of the journey. At the same time, you were shifting and doing your thing too, right?
Right. So the one thing I know about John is when he decides he's going to do something, he does it on the biggest level. And, you know, once he kind of watched The Secret, he really started investigating. And I remember when he brought me in the room and showed it to me, and we watched it together, and I was like, huh.
We hosted a showing of it.
Later we did. Yeah, we did a host at a movie theater of The Secret. But for me, when things really, so we were getting on this journey, we were just kind of exploring and seeking and finding like this whole new world of information that we didn't even know existed. Yeah. And then we went to California. Mm-hmm. We went to California to go to the Grammys. Through my work and what I was doing, I was able to go, and his whole band went, and we all went to the Grammys, which you think would be it was phenomenal. But what ended up happening when we were in California is a friend of mine, a really good friend of mine, told us about Agape.
Oh.
Yes. And we had seen Dr. Beckwith in The Secret.
Right.
And she just kind of said, hey, I go to this place, Agape.
And you remember that guy, Michael Beckwith?
We're like,
okay.
Do
The Secret.
So, and then she even told us about Abraham Hicks, and we were like, that was just too much for us. We were like, what? That was, we were like, we're not ready for that.
To that.
Whatever that
at
is.
the time.
And we went to Agape. And we'll never forget it. I mean, it was a huge, if anyone's
palpable
been there.
Love.
Yeah, you walk in, you just feel this love. And then this was the first time we'd ever experienced where people, when you're a new person and they have something they say to you and everybody puts their hands towards you, and you just we were both in tears. I mean, we were just standing there
the energy was like,
what is happening?
Is this for real?
Just the kindness and the message that he shared was just heart-opening, mind-opening.
Oprah moments at one after the other.
Wow moments. Yeah. And we came back to Atlanta and said, we got to find our own Agape. So that was really kind of, a big shift for us. Then we started looking for a spiritual center in Atlanta, which we found several, but we ended up connecting with Hillside, which was like their sister church. And
great place in Atlanta.
Yeah, beautiful. Dr. Barbara King, amazing speaker, who turned out she was Michael Beckwith's mentor. So anyway, journey is huge, but we came back, and that's really what got us on this, connected to spiritual centers and churches. At this point, he wasn't performing at any of those. He's still rocking out. Yeah. He's, taking his shirt off and all the girls are screaming. That is my story, and that is very true. And I'd be in the audience going, what am I doing? But yeah, so it took a little while before we even got into this, you had left, we had Johnny, and that's when you left and you went and worked corporate, right?
Well, yeah, so finally, when we decided to have a son, very intentionally, and she resigned from being the conference manager.
I was going to be a stay-at-home mom. I was so excited.
The conference closed shop after that. Then we ended up, was that when we were touring? Yeah, we just inked the deal and the band started touring all around the world, in Japan, blah, blah, blah. And that's around the time I came back and I'd already proposed, though.
Yeah,
right?
We got married, and then when Johnny was born is when the deal came crashing down.
He
lost his record deal, basically. Lost the funding for his record.
Lost the funding, the investor, and then decided to go back to corporate work, and so I could stay home with the family. It was actually perfect because it gave me an out, so I didn't have to tour anymore. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and spent the next
4 years as a corporate job, and that was when it was like we almost were like a typical family.
Yeah,
John
big
went to
benefits.
Work. I was a stay-at-home mom. I'd have nice dinners. I'd make him these really nice lunches, which was really nice for a while. And then it wasn't working for John anymore.
Or it wasn't that it wasn't working so much. I mean, true, there were some challenges, but it was that we got very clearly time to resign.
Right. We'd always knew it was just temporary. We were going to go back to music at some point.
Just didn't know how soon.
Yeah.
So we had been basing everything off of guidance. Even that job I got through guidance to go back to corporate America. And we just kept following things. Sometimes things made sense, sometimes it didn't, but we did it. Then the day I got to resign, called Kathy, said, "Baby, I'm getting to resign today." Surprise for us both, but we did it.
Tears.
Yeah, tears. It's like jumping off a cliff blind. Didn't have any backup, nothing.
We have 2 kids in private school, you know, the house, the mortgage. I'm like, can we please find a backup plan first?
Great benefits. You know, director of marketing at a hot agency doing millions of dollars worth of revenue. I felt pretty proud of it, but
we were tied and huge.
There were some challenges, you know, some real challenges that were showing me, okay, maybe it's time, but blah, blah, blah. But anyway, the guys made it real clear. Resigned, and that was a time for us for those 2 years where we went through the challenge of dealing with our scarcity mindsets. Yeah. We really had to face what does it truly take to be abundant. And this was, I was getting guidance left and right. We were answering it for other people, and we were applying it, and we were seeing and facing our own lack consciousness, like just intensely. It was like we didn't know where the next meal was going to come from. We didn't know how we were going to keep the house. We didn't know all this other stuff, and we were noticing the fear around it and uncovering all of this stuff. Go ahead.
You know, and so we're going through this. This is a great story. We're going through this, and John meets Brian. And you invited us to go to a Big Glow.
That's right.
And we were financially in a really challenge. We thought we were going to lose our house at this time.
Yeah, we were out.
Three months behind on our mortgage.
3 months behind on our mortgage, yeah.
And, you know, and John comes to me and says, I'm getting led to spend money and go to this retreat. And I'm like, what?
It was another one of those times where it's like, it doesn't make logical sense. We can't even figure out how to pay our bills. We could be foreclosing on our house, but we need to do this.
We need to go to this retreat.
You know, so we just trusted once again.
We trusted. You know, it was a little more challenging for me to line up, but I did, and we brought Jolie, and we came.
Johnny, too.
No, Johnny wasn't born yet.
Yeah,
Johnny
he was there.
was.
Oh, he was? Oh, yeah, he was a year old.
Both of them.
So, as you know this story, but we show up and we go to our first Big Glow, and I mean, it was taking all of those ideas that we had been getting and reading about, and then all of a sudden there was a community that we were with that was thinking these same things and empowering us and supporting us. And Ash Ruiz, you know, did the SAT song, and really, you know, with me, I remember him asking just real questions about what is the worst thing that could happen. Mm-hmm. You lose your house. Let's talk about it. What does that mean? Because that was my fear. You know, I'd had my house was just something that I'd always had, and I felt like, okay, I'm okay. I've got my house. I got my house. And I didn't know if we were going to be able to keep the house. But somehow, and I don't even really know how to explain it, by really facing it and talking about what's the worst that could happen, it just sort of released something in me. And it through that retreat, I just sort of shifted with the knowing that even if we lose the house, it's still going to be okay. It's still going to be okay. No matter what happens, this knowing really became knowing, but actually became like integrated at that retreat. And we came back and we're like, you know, things really started to happen for us then, as far as
the shift for me at the retreat was actually recognizing what the guidance I'd been getting, like the higher consciousness, how to apply it. There was like a tweak in my mind, almost one of those moments where you almost feel like paranoia because your old paradigm is crumbling, you know. That happened during the SAT song, and I remember recognizing that my inner being is source, or I can connect to, you know, the essence, the God, everything I've been seeking and listening to guides and higher consciousness to lead me to. And all that time they were telling me the same thing, that you have the ability to align with the source of who you are and bring that through and live. It was like something crumbled, and all of a sudden I realized, holy crap, okay. It was just a world changer for me in that moment. And that's when I stopped. We were running an anonymous site for years, an anonymous newsletter, channeling stuff.
Because we were keeping this spiritual stuff on the DL.
On the DL, nobody knew.
We weren't
After
telling
that,
anybody.
So that was one of the things that had run its course at that point. I stopped doing the newsletter. We just started applying the teachings that we'd been getting just for us mainly. And then, but when we came back, it was definitely on a new journey. We had a lot of things to do. Like I finally got straight with the IRS after years of, I was so far back on taxes. Paid it all off though, thankfully. It was
$30,000.
It was ridiculous. But years I had to refile.
We're free.
Yes, determined to tackle all that stuff. We've done the same thing with debt, consolidated, got that on a beautiful plan, paying it off. Just a lot of things we had to look at, take responsibility for, much like our spiritual lives, clean up in a sense, but then also find what worked for us to execute. And so even with our finances, budgeting, do that frequently, twice a month. We're pretty consistent. Like we have a system, it works for us. It can be improved, but and then getting clear on our consciousness, what we needed to let go. We did a lot of that.
I got an important question.
Okay.
So you've mentioned a lot here about guidance, channeling, what you've been getting. So it's almost like, it's funny, like listening to you guys, it's almost like there's like 3 in the relationship. There's like you, and you, John, and Kathy, and the guidance.
That's it.
Right?
That is correct.
So I think that's like really important to talk about here. So Annie and I, we work with you and we create with you, so we hear about the guidance a lot. But tell us, like, how did that start, and what exactly is that, and like, how do you know if it's the guidance or not the guidance?
Excellent.
So 3 questions.
That's great.
Make sure to remember all of those as we go along.
So how it started, you want to take that? I don't remember.
So initially, correct me if I'm wrong, John basically had a Kundalini awakening. He was on a plane to Japan, perhaps?
No, this was at the house.
Okay.
So thanks
I
for
figured
mentioning
you'd
that.
jump in.
You got me primed. So yeah, I had a Kundalini awakening doing the Master Key program. If you've ever read, it's a meditation protocol. So sitting there late at night doing that consistently, and all of a sudden this energy comes up. So I researched what the heck it was, find out some other things that had been happening, like 11/11 showing up, and all these other things like one day my mouth moves and I'm having involuntary movements as I'm meditating, all kinds of stuff. All were pointing to guides wanting to contact us, right? So I'm like, what the heck is this? Turns out somebody sends us Abraham Hicks, who we said we shunned back then, and we heard it.
Now you're ready.
Now we're ready.
What's amazing is, as we're hearing some of it, I'm at the point where, because of music, I'm actually tapping into and doing stream of consciousness writing to open up my creative genius. Well, that creative genius starts giving me all these teachings. I'm like, this is crazy. What is this, right? And then we hear Abraham Hicks. I'm like, wow, that's very similar. I don't remember the exact chronology, but all of that led to, let's look into Abraham Hicks more. Wow, this matches what we're getting, or the stream of consciousness stuff was the beginning. And then we decided, let's see if we can contact these guys the way they did. And we did that.
Because they literally break down how they do it in their first book.
Yeah.
And we followed what they
did. Just sitting back to back, asked for the guides. And after the first challenging day, the second day, just had this energy, that same energy that came up my spine. What's so funny is it locked up here that night. I did the Kundalini thing. Then in our session together, I remember it coming.
Locked up in your neck.
It felt like a giant cramp just coming, and it cleared all the blocks.
Out your
all
mouth.
the way out through my mouth. My mouth started moving. First words were align. The very first word.
Over and over. Align. I'm writing it down. Align.
And intuitively, I'm like, oh, this means I'm supposed to do something. Align,
we didn't even know what it meant. We're like,
align,
yeah. Okay.
Then it went on aloud, whatever. Beautiful messages, but that was the beginning of bringing through this higher consciousness. We started asking, what the heck is
I would come up with all these
questions. She'd ask most of the questions.
Who is Jesus, and is all that real? And just really,
And so, are you God? I remember that question early on.
Can I talk to my grandpa? I mean,
but the answer to that was awesome. Your view of God is limited. we are taking you on a journey to expand your view of God through experience.
Ooh.
Nice.
Dope? Yeah.
It was early
dope,
stuff was just powerful.
It was powerful, man.
We weren't telling anybody.
It was powerful. It was brand new to us.
So, but how do you get in this state? Like, how do you get in the state where you're channeling?
So early on, it just took meditation and getting
Releasing blocks.
to this state where I would relax, and somehow it became kind of intuitive after practice of relaxing, and I think the focus, the attention, I built the ability to focus because I feel like Master Key and Holosync and all these other programs were necessary for me to start letting go of distractions so I could begin to focus. And finally, somehow, I wish I could say it clear cut how it happened in the beginning, but somehow I got to the point where I began to relax enough to become aware of more subtle energy and allow that subtle energy to do its thing, but also the higher consciousness. Like, to me, higher consciousness is more, in a sense, more subtle. Maybe that's why they say still small voice or whatever.
Yeah.
But then eventually, as it became through, I think it described that our desire is a big part of it. It said that once our desire is strong enough to overcome the limitations, we do what it takes, find the practices or ask or what have you. And that's what we did. We found a practice to sit back to back and access it. Go ahead.
I just wanted to say that I always tell people that John's desire to connect directly to God had been since he was a little kid.
Yeah.
Like he's always had, like, I don't know that everybody has that desire, but he wanted the answers directly. He didn't want to hear them
I always
from here
believed
or there.
he could, but I didn't know how. And
So it was like a
never worked.
lifelong desire,
Yeah.
which I don't know that everybody has. Most people are just fine to pray or do the rosary or whatever. So his desire was so strong. That's really why I feel like why he was led to
And
do
it seems
this.
like you have to like still your mind to a place where that can come. You can hear it, right?
So, in the midst of there's one more thing though. Prior to even our journey together, I had a awakening moment at the age of 18 where my paradigm broke and I felt insane. Like I could see all the thoughts. Long story short, I was watching myself in what I described as gone crazy, but I was conscious of it. And I was just looking like, what is this? It just snapped. And in the midst of that, I had a very clear knowing come up and guide me. And that knowing was like telling me what to do, go to the infirmary, see the nurse, telling me to sign myself into the 7-day program at the psych ward and, talk to my mom crying. But I'm just very aware, watching all of this, right? I was also above my body at one time, that same 2-week period, but in just love and light. And then looking at my body and feeling the shame that I was holding on to. So all that to say, I don't think it's stillness that brought me there. I think it was, I don't know if I can put a name on it. Whatever it was grace, definitely, or I like to call it that. But it was something that finally led me to be able to listen somehow. And I think the practices later were what trained me to be able to focus. Because I don't think you have to ignore or steal the mind's thoughts to hear it. I just think you have to focus your attention,
So that leads to the third question, which was, how do you know what's the guidance and what's not?
You want to take that first?
Well, for me, I'll be honest, in the beginning, I literally remember saying, I need proof. I'm like, I need to know that this isn't just John, I mean, I trusted John and he was telling me these things, but the whole thing was
like,
so
show
bizarre.
me the money. No, I'm just kidding.
And for me, the turning point was, I remember us having this conversation. I really need proof. Can you give me some proof? And then the one thing that John hasn't mentioned, when he first started receiving this, he had a lot of physical, intense movements, body flailing all over the place. Like it was, later.
Or that was my morning practice, not necessarily.
But even when you were bringing it through, you would be like shaking. And so I'm sitting in front of him and he's got his eyes closed and he's like this demonized looking, And I mean, there was just all these thoughts going on.
Thank goodness it was just us.
All these thoughts going on. And this is very me, right? So this is what I think, just to be completely honest. He's flailing. And I thought to myself, I sure am glad he's good looking because he looks crazy. Okay? That's the thought in my head. And he's slamming, all of a sudden he just stopped and looked at me and goes, it doesn't matter what John looks like. It matters what he's bringing through. And I was like, whoa, what? I mean, it really freaked me out. But it was just spoke to me. And I did not say that out loud. It was just a thought. And that was it for me. I was like, okay, this is the real deal.
And mind you, I'm conscious of this, and I feel my head go, my eyes are closed, and I feel exactly what comes out, and my conscious mind's like, what the hell is going on?
He doesn't even know.
Because I don't know what's happening,
And I obviously told him afterwards, but that was 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And there's been other times where I know I question it. We'll be led to do some things, and I'm like, what?
It still happens.
It doesn't even make sense. I mean, get on a plane, go to Europe, spend all, whatever. And it's like every time. And
wait to buy the tickets?
Wait to buy tickets like a few days
I was concerned about that one for sure.
It's like, I will tell you that 99% of the time, there's maybe 1% where we never really get a clear understanding of why we were led to do. Yeah. But 99% of the time, it's like if we just trust and we step out on faith, it all makes sense. And somehow we're like, oh, okay. Mm-hmm. So it's absolutely beautiful here, and we get here, and it's just this, but.
And financially,
things just showed up.
Yeah, things just keep showing up.
Like right before we were leaving, he gets a call to say, "Okay, can you come do this week and pay several $1,000?"
We just happen to have that weekend still available, and it's the only weekend available. Right?
And not
help
expecting
pay for our tickets.
So it's like
plus a successful
every time
other retreat we did. That's
true. Yeah. That we step out and we trust. We find alignment through it. Mm-hmm. But, there's still fear that comes up because we will be led to do things that don't logically make sense.
And it's really that attention and that ability to focus that we're talking about, being able to come back to. To me, the practice of channeling is just like the practice of trust. It's, you got the fear, you have this, but that will and that decision to focus on something different, focus on something that feels better, or focus on relaxing, focus on letting go, focus on whatever the practice is, applying it. That's what I think ends up opening us, expanding our awareness and opening these new pathways to allow us to access something else other than these old patterns of fear, right? We shift the focus, put the attention elsewhere.
I know I would like to say one last thing. I think also just trusting that it will happen. Like everything we've been led to do and trusting, for me, I continued to hear from many people over and over again, you can do this, and it got to a point with John and I where, I really needed, I started to have resentment that things were coming through him, and it was like, even though sometimes they would line up with my desires, most of the time I felt like they weren't, or at least in my mind. So John kept encouraging me. We had friends that would show up, they would give me readings. I just kept hearing, you can do this too, if you want to do it, you can do it. It's not just for these special people or whatever. And so really just believing and stepping out, and all of a sudden, like the first time I ever tried, I, did meditation, closed my eyes, asked a question, and things just started coming out of me. It was just like, things I didn't even know came out of me. And now, it's like I obviously had a great master teacher to see him do it for 10 years, But I say that just to encourage anyone. There's not like this, oh, you've got to have this, or if you have the desire and you trust that it can happen, it'll come through.
And back to your question about how do you know, to me, it's like in that moment, you may have some fear, but as you're focusing and bringing this through, there's a quality about it typically. When knowing is coming through, it's almost as if there's this certainty, or this, like, knowing is knowing, and it's like something that you don't have a good explanation for. Like, how do I know this? I don't know how I know, but this is what's coming through, and the feeling of it it can vary, but it shifts, feels better than where maybe you will typically are, right? So you're accessing this higher level of consciousness that just feels better. And as it's coming through, you're actually experiencing knowing, and then egoic mind may still be in fear or whatever. But as you focus on what's coming through and apply what's coming through, it just shifts it all. Like, I don't know how many times we've been in fear of lack, fear of what have you, opinions, ego with each other, and then we're like, all right, let's check in. Boom. For me, if I'm checking in, it just kind of calms it, and I can choose to keep holding on to my own egoic stuff and resistance or whatever, but that certainty comes through, and I'm just like, okay, let me let this go, because this has worked every time, And the 1% of times that we've been uncertain, that's not enough to convince me not to keep doing this, Yeah. So it's also, honestly, it's freaking changed our lives in the sense of our relationship, in the sense of how we parent, the sense of our relationships with the others, period, how we show up. I can go on and on what we do,
what
it's
we
just
eat.
complete what we eat. Yeah, but it really has I feel like we've gone through a transformation by listening to this knowing for the better, where we're not freaking miserable, where we're finding fulfillment, where we're overcoming our fears, where we're facing our demons, or whatever, and letting them out, slaying them, if you will, or resurrecting, or whatever.
Willing to step out of our comfort zone.
Big time. Just continuously expanding, continuously facing the things, and
the biggest thing that I get from you sharing of like, how do you discern if it's that guidance or not? It's like, to me, it feels like it's like there's a fearlessness, right? Which makes sense. Like, why would, like, Source isn't going to be afraid of anything because Source is Source, Yeah. So it's like that answer is not going to care about fears or worries or limitations or what could go wrong.
Very
It's just going to give you the straight answer.
Yeah.
And then
it's usually some flavor of that fits you perfectly and hits you perfectly of all is well and always is. Right. Let me remind you this way, and this is what's best.
Yeah. So that's powerful.
Yeah.
I wanted to. Do you have any questions? I was going to ask something else.
Well, I'm just curious what you guys are up to next, or how can people plug into you? What you got going on?
So we actually just launched on May 14th, 2019, officially. Healing Arts Management LLC.
Yes.
So we finally, made it official. We've been had Healing Arts for a while now, but we've been helping one other artist, Jill Colucci, awesome multi-platinum
healing artist. Yeah.
Healing artist. 20
million records sold. Amazing artist.
So assisting her and growing the events, like assisting it in whatever events, like partnering up with you guys, doing events. We've got other people we've been partnering with. And
we've had several retreats. The Conscious Songwriting Retreat. Yeah. I did a woman's retreat.
Yeah.
The Expanding Your Awareness and Intuition Retreat. Yeah. And then we are blessed at times to partner with you guys. And
Yay!
Glow.
More of that coming.
So retreats, John speaks in spiritual centers all over the country.
Yeah, been doing a lot of
speaking.
Speaking, a lot of one-on-one, remote and one-on-one sessions.
Well, yes, that's been
all kinds of stuff.
Beautiful thing that has emerged that we weren't. That's the other thing I just want to say. These first in my mind, John was a singer. Yeah. Beautiful voice. Beautiful.
I remember I first told you the guidance I got.
I'm guided to speak. I'm like,
no, it was, but it was even more grandiose sound. I was like, so I'm getting that I'm a teacher, a healer, a singer, and a lover, right? I'm like, okay, so this is the roles that I'm supposed to be stepping into, and I need to start speaking, doing this and doing that. It was like, what?
So the speaking part was definitely, I had to warm up to it. And now, of course, oh my gosh, it's so, whenever he speaks at one of these events, I'm right there with everybody, just like, you'd think I would have heard it all, but every time it's a new way of looking at basically a very basic idea.
Me too, yeah.
And then the guidance sessions, that's been a new thing. It's been coming to us. He's been learning not only just to receive and channel, but now to do readings. We really expanded in getting symbols and giving people very in-depth readings.
And the healing has
been,
We had a session with Kathy right before I left for Oklahoma. And then when I got to Oklahoma, I was getting guidance to do this session for this other lady who had a bone spur or something like. I mean, it was like the feedback they were giving me was like, oh, cool. Because it's the way I look at it is it's just learning how do you get out the way, trust this higher consciousness that you are, this higher power, invoking or whatever, and allow it to do what it does. Like it's a real power that we have the ability to access. How do you get out the way, allow it to do its thing, and then the feedback that you hear is like it works. Like these energetic shifts and all this stuff, just powerful stuff. Mm-hmm. So we're continuing to not only practice that but show others how. I think that's what excites me most. Really, is in our development. We're learning to expand, learning to let go of limitations, learning to access these higher ways of being, doing, and having, and then being able to share it. So I'd say my website, johnstringerinc.com, has a lot of that. Yeah. HealingArtsMGMT.com will have a lot of that as well soon.
Yes.
Awesome.
The info.
I have a comment and then probably the last question, unless there's something that comes up. But one of the things that I see in what you're talking about is just the expansion. Like you're continually growing as individuals and as a couple, and like where you started at your journey to like where you are now is like really incredible. And I think people have this idea or they have this fear in relationship that they have to like keep things the same to like keep the relationship together. And I think that's a mistake. I think like one of the phrases that we've come up with recently is expansion and compression. So, and like you need a balance of both of those things, So true. So like just compression. I used to say expansion and groundedness, but I like the verb compression as a verb. So it's like you're making space to like, kind of squeeze each other together, But if it's just that and there's no expansion, then there's like kind of this stagnant, dead, stuck energy, Yep. And if there's like just all expansion and no compression, then there's no relationship. Right. So having a balance for both of those feels like really something that I think is, and you got to find that balance. It's always changing. It's always different.
That's well said.
But
it's a lot like, and so many analogies would fit on the way up the stairs. I was thinking, man, relationships are so much like the moods you go through as a human being. Like, at one time you're elated. It just keeps shifting.
Yeah.
Right? Another time you're at peace. You feel good. Yeah. Another time you're excited and energetic. Another time you're tired and want to rest. Like I feel like relationships do the exact same thing.
That's a good
analogy.
Where
they go through these cycles and shifts and what have you. And if you're what we call aligned is just really accessing higher knowing, higher consciousness. If you're aligned, you'll be able to ride it, or if you're present, centered, whatever, you'll be able to ride those shifts and honor those shifts without necessarily feeling like, oh my God, it's changing and something is wrong, or oh my God, I'm afraid, If that comes up though, you're able to, you have a practice to say, okay, I'm feeling afraid, or okay, I'm resisting this, and being able to look at it and decide consciously versus, the subconscious giving into it and just reacting all the time. And so I feel like the relationships help you see those things too, like to be able to ride the changes together and see what's preventing you from being fulfilled. And when I say preventing you from being fulfilled, I mean internally. Like, what are you holding on to internally that's not allowing you to be happy regardless of what's going on, or be fulfilled regardless of what's going on?
I would say one of the biggest shifts for us in our relationship is recognizing that we're responsible for our own happiness. So many people out there, I'm looking for my soulmate and all, and beautiful, and so grateful in this present moment that John and I are together and on this journey together, and I wake up with that gratitude every day. But really always coming back to, the unshakable power, as I call it, that really this internal you is the only thing that doesn't change, as you certainly have shown us on many retreats, Brian. And, I could be mad at John and I'm not feeling like, oh my gosh, I love him so much. There's moments where he pisses me off,
That's that shift, right?
And I'm just like, and I'm not the love is still there, but I'm not feeling like being loving towards him, you know. And then you start to question, okay, is this not really my soulmate, or, you know? But really, all of that is internal for me. I have to take it back and own it, and create my own peace and bring that to John, to all my relationships. Doesn't mean it doesn't have the ups and downs like we're talking about, but in those ups and downs, I feel like what really brings you to the peace is going back into your own unshakable power and coming from that point, which basically is the lesson that I've continued to get, that I'm okay no matter what. Doesn't mean that if tomorrow John got hit by a bus, I'd just be like, okay. I mean, there may be some people that are like that. I'm not at that point. I would definitely, there would be some suffering, but there would be knowing. I know I can go to the knowing that I would be okay. You know, no matter what shows up in my outer. Because it's all an experience, you know. It's all.
I love that.
Yeah,
it's all an experience.
It's all an experience. Now, sometimes that experience is like a rough ride, and you're hanging on, and you're screaming, and you're crying, and then you get to the other side.
Yeah.
And it's like, you know,
it's all temporary.
It's all temporary. So, you know, that's something. And I feel like John and I also have a good communication. You know, I mean, even when we're mad, when I get angry, he's really good at getting aligned. And I know that there's times where he's struggling, and then I seem to be able to be, like, we just have that, you know, when one of us needs a little help or a little push, the other one is there to do it. Not always easy.
On the way here,
yeah, we were talking about.
Yeah.
One of us we'd miss a plane, one of us would be struggling, and then
something would happen that might trigger her, and I'm like, it's not. I'm feeling great, so I just hold space for her and be like, you know, we just keep moving forward. Then something hit me, and I'm like, why the hell am I bothered by this? You know, I'm struggling right now. And she's totally cool, you know. Yeah. It's like, what the hell? It's funny.
So, and I wanted to say this one other thing, that I think being able to be vulnerable.
Yeah, good word.
It's been a huge thing for me, because, you know, when you have all these fears in your head and you're afraid to say it because of change, you know, you're going to say it, and then, okay, things are not going to be the same. But in that vulnerable space, we've found over and over again that's where the love really is. You know, when you really are just...
brings things into the light.
That's where trust is built, I think.
Yeah.
Even though it seems like maybe it wouldn't be, maybe it could be
it's
shattered.
like your mind is telling you.
Yeah.
And she's such a great example of it. I mean, I try to be that too. But I can see from your example, there are times where I rather just not be vulnerable and do my practice as hard as I can to shed whatever's going on, versus say, I'm struggling right now, yada, 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 explain it. It's like, no, I just want to get aligned. Whereas Kathy will be like, look, this is where I'm at. I'm going through this. When she does it, it always softens my heart, because it, you know, she's just letting you know before she's even like fixed it or addressed it, like, whoa, here's where I'm at. And it just does something for me many a times. And there are times where I think I've learned from that example and done that, and it's been helpful, where I've applied that same thing, like, I'm trying, but it's just not working. Here's where I'm at.
And that's all I need. That's all I need to hear. And then I'm just like, okay, I'm giving you your space. I'm here. If you need me, but let, you know, whatever you need in the situation, because, you know, when we're first, I'd be like, how can I fix it? How can I fix it? That's what I feel like I'm here to learn this weekend, is letting go of how I can fix it.
Yeah.
That's my intention.
Yeah.
And I've been doing, I really feel like I've got some strength around that.
Absolutely.
You know, but you have taught me that, you know, I'd be like, you know, I don't need to fix him.
Yeah.
I love you. I'm here for you. Just call me. But I'm going to be over here with my unshakable power and giving you the space that you need, instead of feeling, oh, he doesn't want me. Why isn't he, you know, why can't I fix him? Why, you know, that kind of thing.
And in those times, like a great example is before retreats, often we'll have this space where all this stuff just comes up. And like, I'm often in this, like, where did this come from? You know, like, what is going on? I'm getting triggered, a lot of emotion, a lot of stuff. And I'm doing my best to just align, accept, and flow through it. And sometimes I'm like rocking it and not attached, not entangled, and just experiencing it and being with it. Other times I'm like, oh, I'm confused. What the hell is happening? You know, it's like, but in all those times, if I can be open with her and let her know what's going on, it usually seems to be help for you.
Absolutely.
By me being vulnerable to explain, okay, I'm doing the best I can right now. I'm not at high vibration, but I'm accepting it. Whatever. We have those conversations.
We have those conversations
often, and I think it helps.
Absolutely.
So any last advice for people that are looking for their soulmate, their twin flame, their partner in shine?
Yes.
Relationship advice. Any last relationship advice?
We were talking about some agreements we
Yes.
made
Yeah.
recently while here, and I think you want to talk about the two agreements we kind of pinpointed that are probably the most important ones for
I'll
us.
talk about one, and you can take the other. I know that when we do find that we're unaligned, we have the agreement to, without taking it personally or doing our best to not, because we're in the heat of something. You want to keep going sometimes, and to just really say, hey, we need to get aligned on this, and we give ourselves that space to get centered. Because when you're centered and you're coming from a place of love, it's a totally different conversation.
And that may look like, well, I think it needs to be blah, blah, blah. Well, I think it needs to be this. You know what? Why don't we take a break and get aligned?
And then check in. Oftentimes it ends with, okay, it doesn't really matter what you or I think on this egoic level.
Yeah.
Let's see what's best and highest in this situation.
Sometimes, yes. That's the best case scenario.
That is, and that happens often.
And that's the first agreement to me, is to check in and to find out what's best and highest, regardless of our opinions.
Right.
When we forget that,
And we do.
I think, and get to that
Entangled then.
Yeah, entangled in just this story and whatever, that's when we realize we need to take a break. Because it's really tough to just, wait, stop, let's just align.
Yeah, you have to take a break.
Sometimes it depends on where you are vibrationally, how quickly you can shift that momentum just because of your own decision, like your own subconscious decision to be entangled. You don't want to let go at that moment. Yeah. So it's like, okay, step back, let's give some space and get aligned. And there's been times where you've said to me, did you check in on it? Are you aligned right now? Not in a mean way, but in a, you check in?
Don't seem aligned right now.
Are you resistant right now? Are you struggling? Whatever. And I appreciate that 90% of the time. 10% of the time, I'm kind of like, okay. And then there's times where I'll be like, you feeling aligned? You feeling a little off right now? Should we talk about this later? Or sometimes let's just talk about this later. Because I don't feel like either one of us is aligned right now.
And what's so amazing about that is when we do take the time, and I'll go in and we get, he does what he does. I come in and do my meditation and get quiet and focus on my breathing and, bring my focus to my heart.
Yeah, you always get good stuff. Yeah.
And if I have, and I'll get, you were attached to this, really stuff that I don't even want to hear will come through me.
Yeah, very clear.
And then I go and talk to him about it. And I really have to release my ego to do that, because it's basically saying, okay, I was doing this. And I'm like, I didn't even realize I was doing that. And then we get in this incredible conversation about it, which
get to the root of it.
We end up hugging, we end up connecting.
Maybe even crying.
I
think I've done the most crying.
He cries a lot.
I'll be coming to her after I've checked in, like, okay, I'm sorry, man. I was wrong. I was judging you. I didn't know.
I was like, okay.
That's so funny.
So yeah, that would be, to me, some major advice. And have an agreement before you're in the heat of the argument, or whatever you want to call it. I mean, we don't really ever consider ourselves arguing, but we get heated.
Yeah.
And before that, what are the triggers? Let's say, okay, if we get to this point, we take a break. We agree to do that. So it's not like one person saying, and then...
Although we have had the one person thing a couple times. We just had to do it because, one of us has to stop the arguing.
True. But I think this is important, and I say this as a woman. Often men might say, let's take a break, and then not want to revisit it. They're just trying to get out of it. At least that's not so much John, to be honest, but in my experience. They'll just be like, okay, babe, let's just talk about it later. And then they don't want to revisit it. So it's really important, in my opinion, to say if you're in a relationship that you make that agreement that you're not just trying to get out of the argument. You come back, you get centered, and you don't, because days could go by. Are we ever going to talk about it again? That's not what we're talking about, right? We're talking, for us, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, typically. So I'm just saying, this isn't like an out of the conversation and then you're both left wondering what's the next move. You kind of have to have a plan.
So finding the practices that help you get to
centered.
That point where you can get centered is important.
Yeah.
Agreeing to make that kind of the guiding light in your relationship, I think, is what has helped us the whole time.
Yeah.
Since we've been on this path anyway.
Very true.
And every time something challenging comes up, that's always our go-to. That's why we're here today.
That's right. So do you ever, because you're both channeling now, so this is probably an interesting question for me. So you're both channeling, or you're both getting guidance. Mm-hmm. So do you ever check in and get two different guidances?
Once
we just did recently.
Yeah, very recently.
Very recently.
It was pretty funny, actually. It was a bag.
Typically, no. I will say, up until this first time, it would be like, I would check in and it would be, he would be getting the same, not exactly the same, but the core would be the same. But strangely, he was out of town. I was trying to reach him. We wanted to get this really nice bag for this trip, and I couldn't reach him, and it had to be delivered before we went. I got centered and said, is it best and highest to get this bag? And, I felt a yes, and I got it. And right at the same time, he had replied and said, I'm getting a no.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'd already ordered the bag, and I was like, that's interesting. I got a yes.
And it's perfect because the reality that I saw was this has happened before in other capacities, like with people I've assisted or whatever. Yeah. They'd use a pendulum and be getting an answer, then I'd get something else to tell them, right? Yeah. In all those cases, it's always been about them trusting their inner guidance. Yeah. Always. Yeah. And I felt like this was just another. And it doesn't shake my faith in my direction. It just makes me feel like, okay, hopefully she's trusting her guidance because she executed. Now is she gonna regret it, or is she gonna? And it
really, even real quick, like there was a situation where he made some comment on an outfit that I had, and that usually brings me to my core and really, take things personally or whatever. And I'm just finding that I was just like, I still like it. Mm-hmm. Really, I'm finding my. To check in and get my own guidance and be like, I just can't reach them. We're going to go with what I'm getting. Mm-hmm. It's a big shift for me. Yeah, so I feel like there's things that are supporting me on this journey to know that we're on our journeys and we're blessed to be sharing this journey. Yeah. But really, we have our individual journeys that are coming together.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. And seeing each other stronger, supporting each other in that way. Like she supported me on my journey, I'm supporting her on her journey. I feel like that's a important ingredient in the relationship. Absolutely. Wanting to see the best for each other. Mm.
Love you, baby.
Mm-hmm. Any last things you want to say, Annie?
You guys are so inspiring. Just so appreciate being here.
Thanks, sweetie.
Yeah.
Yep. We love you guys, and
love you too.
We love sharing this journey together with you.
Yes, big glow.
And
big glow.
This was great.
Yes.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. We're going out in our beautiful balcony in Italy.